Growth sounds exciting when we talk about it from the outside. More revenue, more opportunities, more momentum. But behind the scenes, growth often creates something much heavier. More decisions, more pressure, more complexity, more responsibility sitting on the shoulders of the founder. And there's a stage many businesses enter when everything feels chaotic and urgent at once. The systems are stretched, the team needs direction, the founder becomes the bottleneck, and the business that once created freedom starts consuming the person who built it. Today's conversation is about what sustainable growth actually looks like behind the scenes and how calm, structured leadership can change outcomes during emotional, complex seasons of business and life. Welcome to Deals with Heels. I'm Debra, your host. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited about today's guest. Her name is Lauren Zaslansky Conner. She's a fractional COO, revenue operations strategist, and founder of Zaz Business Solutions. Lauren helps growing businesses navigate the messy middle of scale by bringing operational clarity, thoughtful decision-making, and sustainable structure to organizations that are often moving faster than their systems or leaders can comfortably hold. Her background spans Disney consumer products, mission-driven companies, and operational leadership inside emotionally complex environments where growth, caregiving, and real life all intersect. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Debra. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited for this conversation. I work a lot with growth, but I am not an operational person. Operations people, I love talking to them because their stuff, of course, impacts mine too, but I really love having that. And I'm so excited to have you on the show. And I want to start out really talking about kind of that point in a growing business where everything starts to feel really urgent and heavy. It's supposed to feel good and it looks like on the outside, wow, everything. But to the founder, often it is weight. So let's talk about that and how you see that occurring in what you do every day.
Yeah. So often when companies, at the beginning, there's so much momentum, right? There's that energy. And for many, I'm saying many leaders, they're coming in entrepreneurial. They're maybe a little ADHD. They love that beginning. The beginning is exciting, right? And then things kind of calm down. They're supposed to calm down, right? They feel like when they hit that million, it's going to be great. Or when they hit the 10 million, it's going to be great. But what starts to happen is all of those sort of scrappy things, when you put things on a Post-it and you stick it on the board, that mess is temporary. I'll clean that up later, right? And they start to feel they can't be, you can't keep it all in your head. And once you can't keep it all in your head, you have to get it out of your head, right? You have to start to other people. And it becomes, you need systems to handle that, but you also need the emotional awareness to be able to know that you are not going to be the only person who controls information. And there is a tension there between building a system and knowing that you have to have other people in charge of pieces of this. And it's not going to be your baby 100% anymore. And that tension is really scary for a lot of people.
Yes, it is. I felt it myself, and I don't have, I'm in marketing and advertising and consulting, but there's certain aspects of it that it's hard to let go of once you've been doing it for so long. And that friction point, boy, we all kind of get stuck there. What do you see as the big reasons that we kind of get stuck in that point?
I think, when something's urgent, you can make a decision right away, right? But when something feels a little less urgent, it's easy to put it off. Or you get advice and you get conflicting advice, right? So as a leader, especially if you used to work in corporate, right? You kind of know where you're going. When you're an entrepreneur, you don't know where you're going, right?
It's up to you to decide where everybody's going.
There's a forest, right? I'm looking at it. I've described this in my personal life. There's a path, and now there's a blob. And you're like, okay, or let's go back to the forest, right? I have to decide which path to take. And then I have to make that path. Then I have to cut down the trees for that path. And so it's very easy to say, I'm not going to deal with that today because there's 19 other people waiting in line to ask a question. So all of those decisions get put into like this big pile of decisions, which isn't really a pile. It's just kind of a blob, right? And
Although mine
so,
sometimes is Post-it notes, and it is kind of a pile.
yeah, like, right. Post-it notes might also be in your car or they get stuck to the bottom of your
Right.
shoe.
Exactly.
So, and so what I find often founders delay these decisions, but that's actually a decision in itself because something is actually happening, right? If you don't make a decision, something's still happening. If you don't decide on launching a product, the product doesn't get launched. So you've decided not to launch the
Mhm.
product, right? If you don't prepare to go to a trade show, you've decided not to go to the trade show. You might have not meant to, right? So that sometimes that rush, and that mentality of like, hurry up and break things is detrimental to planning thoughtful growth, right? Because you're not used to saying, whoa, we have to stop, think about where we are right now, get the right people in the room to talk about that. And I hear this so much, right? I hear this from founders who say, I don't have time to talk about that decision or to think about what I did wrong because I'm in a rush. So, well,
Mm.
that's like, getting on the highway and getting on the wrong road. You're driving really fast, but you don't know where you're going to go. So we need to stop. Let's talk about where you want to actually go. Or you may not know exactly, but like, are we aiming for Kansas or California? Let's go.
Right.
So then we can start to put the things in place. And some of those things that you start to put in place become questions that you have to answer, markers that you'll go, okay, when we get here, here's when we have to make a decision. And these are the metrics that we'll look at to make that decision, right?
Right.
But
Planning to make a decision.
planning to
That's
make a
so important rather
right?
than just say it'll be
Oh,
when
no.
we'll know when it's time. It's not, I can't make that yet. I don't have everything. But rather than, I like that, putting a metric in when this and this happens, then we'll have the information to make the decision.
Yeah, yeah. And so, working with a client now and, having the discussion of, okay, we talk about, oh, we need to get that extra sale. We need to get, and I know you talk a lot about the connection between sales and marketing and operation from the sales angle, right? And what I loved about you is you talk a lot of the same things I do, right? How it all intersects and how that also intersects with the humanity piece of it, right? They're all like jumbled together in my mind. And if the founder are saying, okay, well, you can't get that sale if you don't have the operations to support it. So let's make sure that we're building those two things together. But you can't build those two things together if you don't have the money to build that together. And you don't want the money because you don't want to be working for an investor. So maybe you don't want the sale.
Right. It gets
And
to
that's
that.
okay.
And I have been, I come in, usually it's when all of the little misalignments have hit sales. And then we need help. And
Fix it.
oftentimes I may be the third person that they're coming to for help. And they've already attempted to help it with marketing or advertising or new salespeople or all the things that we do within that little section of it. And I spent a lot of time with a business and looked at all of their things, and they were really focused on growing and helping their sales. We're struggling. We need more sales. And it became really obvious that they couldn't actually fulfill more sales
Yeah.
because it was broken over on this. Well, we'll fix that when we have more sales. They don't understand how that integration affects everything. It affects your team
Everything.
that's already struggling to keep up. It affects your customer experience and how they're doing. And now that that's affected demand building and
Mhm.
landed in sales's lap, you're finally paying attention to it. And now it needs to be fixed. And what they want to fix are sales. And so I had to say,
Right.
most of the marketing and sales work that you've done is pretty good. And I wish I could come in and say, ding, let's
Right.
just do, there are definitely tweaks we can do, but a huge part of it is that you can't actually fulfill any more sales. You're
Right.
barely fulfilling what you have. And that break is really affecting everything else. And so how
Yeah.
often do you see that happening?
That completely, and I come in and I look at it holistically, right? So I
Right.
will do an assessment, and often that assessment, it'll say, okay, you may need a sales team, or at least you'll need a sales process. But that's often not where you can start Because if you already have customers that are not getting phone calls, right? You need an account management system. And if the accounts that you have aren't happy, retention is cheaper than getting new sales, right? I mean, I go back in the day, back before there was internet sales, there was direct mail. That was my background. And there was the acquisition time and there was acquisition, there was retention, right? I mean, we would get magazines and book subscriptions.
Yes.
Yeah, the more you can keep people, the cheaper it is, right? I do this with membership in organizations. And often it's so sexy to get the new that people forget about the old.
They do.
Right? And so
And I really have been focusing on this enterprise growth cycle as opposed to the sales cycle. And my partner is a customer experience team building. He's not an operations expert, but that part of the operations expert where it is in there. For me, that is more of like an infinity symbol, right? Because sales is a transfer of enthusiasm. If I can make somebody feel enthusiastic about how my product or service is going to help them or how they're going to love it or enjoy whatever the attributes of it are, then even if I don't sell it, now I can get a referral or a recommendation. And then they go through your whole customer experience process from when you've sold them all through the fulfillment. And then they just get cast over there and they should never leave that enterprise growth cycle. They should always be in it because either they're going to buy again, we're going to launch a different product that we can sell to them, or they're going to refer it and be a true believer and give you great recommendations. And so I think that everybody forgets. You're so right about that becomes like, okay, they're done with them. Bring on the new.
And it's with everything, right? I mean, I'm on the board of a synagogue, right? There's membership, there's tuition, right? If I think about when I, work with products, right? It's like, if you have the product and you remember what the product is, how often am I I'm referring people products that I use all the time.
Yes.
Right. And if they make it easy for me to do that, great. Right. If I remember what it's called and I can pass it on and I can write it down. I mean, how many people say, oh, I bought that purse that you told me about, right? Because I can remember it and they made it good for me. But when it comes to services or software, if you have a bad experience, calling somebody up, you're not going to recommend it. So when I come into a company, I will look holistically. And often where that messy middle hits is the data is really bad. So we can't even track what we're looking at. So often I start going, backwards. Like let's start. It's like an accounting finance, and I started at Disney years ago in operational finance. And that's like the basic language of, overall numbers and then what's your product P&L? Like how much are you making and kind of different views of that. Because often, there's a lot of work happening and it's spinning in circles, right? And then you're saying, well, what are you spending all your days doing? You're spending all your days making all this new product, but 95% of your sales are this one great one. So let's try to, and it's so hard, right? That discipline is so hard. Mentioned, most entrepreneurs love to create. They love to create. And so then I become the bad guy, like, no more new stuff. But we have to channel the new stuff into what's working. So you can get a new channel with an old product, right? Or
you just campaigns, right?
Yes.
To put them in campaigns, and if they're similar products, now you're reselling back and you're getting them back into all of that growth cycle. But boy, and they do that with businesses as well. I call them pollinators because they've got 7 businesses, right? Because the starting it is the part that they love, but standing in the muck of it and pushing it and doing it when things are difficult, that's where the real magic happens. If you're able to, and there's a mindset shift with it. And I love that you talked about it within the business. They're not out doing more businesses, but new products, trying to find that magic one yet again.
Yeah, it's really tough. And so then finding that there's that shift of, we can't make it in the kitchen anymore. We got to make it in a big place, but also are the right people involved? My niece is doing social media. My sister-in-law is the accountant. I don't know what's happening, but they seem to do a lot of work. Let's start to document that and make sure, and nobody's taken a vacation ever, right? Because they're just in it. And so, I've been saying, you can't scale, you can't sell if you can't take a vacation.
This is
So,
true because it's like we used to say back in the 90s, the hit by the beer truck. If you get hit by a beer truck tomorrow, can anybody step in and even understand what the hell's going on
mhm,
in what you were doing? Is there some form of a system in place? And I'm a creative person. I'm very analytical. I want all of the information, but I don't like a lot of burdensome systems. I think
right.
it bogs down sales. And it's like you got this
Yeah.
little business and they put Salesforce in, and you're like, God, you picked the most complicated CRM that exists
Yeah.
to manage that. And then it bogs down so much. Everybody's so focused on figuring out how to operate, to put things in, to make it easier for the admin person
Yeah.
to do their job. Okay, the admin person has time to do right. It just gets so without the right
Right.
advice. And I think that there's like emotional complexity that's involved
Yeah.
in that,
Yeah.
right?
I love you mentioned CRM. So years ago at Disney, but then in other places, I was one of the leads when we had new software, and change management is part of all of this, right? And what happens, they'll put a new system in, CRM system and CRM, customer relationship management. For those of you who don't know, try to define acronyms when I can, because often you have people of different generations, different backgrounds. No one knows what anyone's talking about.
I know I accidentally called a slide deck a PowerPoint the other day, and everyone knew I was over 40.
It's still my baby. But yeah, so they put a system in, and then somebody gets blamed for not using it, right? And they just because apparently everybody wants to do their job poorly and they just don't want to do their job. And so I often come in with that, like somebody says, nobody's doing the thing they're supposed to. Nobody's doing their timesheets. Nobody's doing it. And I say, well, what type of onboarding did you do with the system? What? Right? Or, well, they have videos. I said, okay. Did you make sure people watch them? Like, first of all, the videos are always, time consuming and difficult to navigate, right?
Amen.
And
Preaching
not
to the choir. I
right.
might be able to answer the test without watching the video. Is there a test I can take in lieu of the video?
Can I have it? I want it. I'm old school too. I want it printed. I want to be able to highlight. I want to be able to refer to the book. So, there has to be, when it's a new person, when it's a new agency, when it's a new system, that's all part of that change management. And this is at that point where it can't all be in your head. You're building a system. Don't go crazy over complicated. Don't get the fancy car, get the system that works, but also make sure when you get it, you're asking a lot of questions. You're training people on it. There's an open door policy. Somebody is helping people along. And then when somebody's not using it, you're not going, hey, what's happening? It doesn't seem to be used. And you'll find, it's easier to do the offline spreadsheet because no one was told how it fits into the larger system. And maybe it's a bad system, but also,
Yeah.
you're pushing things down people's throats sometimes. And that's where at that middle, it hits a lot.
Yeah. And if there's a disconnect there, listen to your people. That's
Yeah.
what I think the big thing is, the communication.
Mhm.
That if they're not using it, talk to them and find out why, instead of just
Radical.
classifying them as incapable or
Right.
obstinate. Often, we get
Old.
that employee is
Old.
just old or obstinate and they just aren't doing it. That's aggravating to the admin people. And often in my departments, when I was in corporate America, I had a lot of creative people. We had analytical people too, but we had a lot of creative people. And in sales departments, when you have somebody that's great at sales, you're almost guaranteed they're going to suck at the paperwork.
Right.
And even if it's not paper and it's online, it's still, they
Still
suck at
paperwork
that
to me.
too. It's
Right.
still the admin part of it. And I've had this conversation where, okay, you're great at the paperwork and the admin and all of the systems. That's why we hired you in this role. Are you good at sales? Well, no, I don't want any part of sales. Okay, so why do you expect someone good at sales to be great at what you do?
Right.
Simply because everyone has to have a hand in what you do so we can track what's happening doesn't mean that everyone is ever going to learn enough to be good at it.
Yeah.
And seeing that the light up with perspective then of I
Beautiful.
didn't
Yep.
even consider it being that way. I was just aggravated because they couldn't get it.
Right.
And it
Right. Right.
seems so simple. It's just fit, because to all of us, what we do seems simple.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But so
Yep.
to that end, I think you're exactly right that you have to pay attention to what everyone is saying. And that data is often missing, even when it's your own darn employees.
Well, maybe especially when it's your own employees, right? Because what happens is people don't want to, they never want to admit, not, I don't want to say never, but it's often hard to admit upward when you feel like you're a failure. And if someone tells you something is easy to do, and there's this perception that paperwork is assistant work, which is easy, right? I would be a horrible assistant. Like nobody would hire me. Like that would be a horrible job for me, right? But it's considered an entry level, not easy job, right? So it's like, well, no one would ever admit to not being good, doesn't like to admit it. Well, I don't know, no one. Women often don't want to
Right,
admit they're
because
not
we're
good.
supposed to be accommodating. And even if it's hard, we're supposed to do it whether we're good at it or not to make sure everybody else has what they need.
Right. So
Yes.
we don't say anything and then it builds and the guilt builds. And so often, and when questions are asked, it's not, I see that you haven't done that. How can I help you do it? It's, why wasn't that done? Or what's wrong with it? Like it come
Mm-hmm.
at it. So often, if you combine that type of emotion with the emotion of a changing business, right? There's a lot of stress, right? When a business is changing, everyone is on edge, right? Everyone thinks, oh my gosh, they're coming for me next, right? So being really gentle with we're rushing. Yes, we want to grow, but you're not going to grow by just jamming it through people's throats. Like you have to have a conversation to say, here's the thing, we're going to go in this direction, right? First, you got to figure out what direction that is, and then let's talk to the people here and see where they want to go and see if there's a problem. Let's talk to them about why. And maybe there's some block, and the blocks that you find out when you actually ask the question are like, I don't know, I lost my login. I never had a login, right?
Right. Exactly. That I just can't log in. I tried. And so I'm doing it this old way
Right.
because I didn't want to be a problem.
You
Everybody's
don't want to
got
be
a
a
lot more
problem.
important things to
Exactly.
deal
My
with.
computer doesn't work. It's really slow, so I can't do the thing that you want to do. So I can only do it when nobody else is on the system from home. I mean, I hear those types of things, and you think somebody's being difficult, and then so I think, I mean, this is all human and leadership, but when there is an inflection point in a business, all of these emotions are in play. And so you do an assessment of what, I'll come in and do an assessment of what's happening, but it's also talking to all the people involved and to make sure that you're as honest as possible about what you're trying to do and giving them the choice to be on or off, but also trying to be helpful, like to help them help you get to the next level.
Yeah, is so important. And to see when people see where in the growth system they lie, and they may be in fulfillment, they may be doing payroll, they
Yeah.
may be answering who knows what they're doing, but their butt isn't in the sales seat.
Yep.
It's somewhere else in the organization. But the organization only exists to sell things.
Right.
And often people feel so disconnected from the growth process. Oh, well, I'm not involved in that. Well, you are, because the whole company is. And instead of leading it with making them feel uncomfortable, like they're involved in sales somehow, but helping them understand how they fit into it just by what they're doing every single day, and
Yeah.
empowering them to make decisions that help the customer and that help
Yeah.
other team members. Now they they feel empowered. They feel like a
Yeah.
part of the big wheel of growth. And I have found that can make a huge difference during change, because now they feel included in it. Right?
Right. And I think if you think about empowerment as almost like the flip side of boundary setting, right? You're giving somebody almost like a box. Like, here's what you can do, and this is what you can't do. And that's at every level, right? So if somebody is answering the phones for you and you give them, these are things you can't these are these are no-goes. Like, you can't do this, but here's what you can do, right? If a customer complains about something, here's some leverage you can pull. They're going to feel a lot more empowered to be able to solve problems, and they're going to be less likely to bother you as the founder. And therefore you're going to have more time to do the things that you need to do. So one of the things I really push for when I'm working with a founder is, let's try to make decisions once and then document them, so you don't have to keep making the same decision over and over. And the way that flows down in the organization is empowering people to make things, but being really clear about what that is.
Right. Finding out as a founder, what are you comfortable doing in this situation? And if you're always comfortable with these 3 things, then why are you the one that has to do them?
Right. And often they don't know. And I've worked with a founder, and it was just, well, it's just a vibe. I'm like, okay, well, let's figure out what the vibe is, so we can try to document. Because, vibe is hard to scale. So, let's try to document.
Let's go through it. And then when you feel the vibe is right, we'll say yes.
Yes,
right.
So we have
and then it's a gut, right? You do have to kind of go with your gut, but you don't have to go with your gut every single time. You got to trust your people's gut and give them the tools and the rules for them to stay within, because just telling them, oh, you have my permission to make the customer happy. Yeah. Wow. You tell Debra that.
And then they get nervous. They get really nervous, and they don't know how to make a decision, and they get frozen.
Right.
I remember when I joined Disney Baby, I was a director of strategic marketing, and I was met with, it was like 100-page style guide and voice guide, and I was in charge of their email.
Telling you, Disney.
Whew. It was the email and the email campaigns, and I just remember being like, and I took over from the woman who was doing those campaigns, and I said, how do you know? And I just remember being like, I couldn't see it until I could. The one day it clicked.
Yes.
But it's all there. It's all documented. These are the rules. These are the words you can't say. These are the icons you can use. But there was a moment when I was able to take what was, all documented there and translate that into, the emails that then the coordinator and the email team, I had the whole team doing it.
But once you saw it,
they got it, and then I can sign off on it. But, you have to train the people to use it. And what's, to your point earlier, what's in your head and seems really easy is explaining it and teaching somebody is often very, very difficult, right? But
it is. And
I'm
like, okay, well, let's just write down the steps that you take.
Yeah.
So that you can hand it to somebody else. Or there's a sheet if something happens and you're not here, and I can pull this sheet out and here's your step by step. And when they start doing it, it's amazing when they're like, okay, no, wait, this happens next. And then because it's become so ingrained in them that they don't even remember what steps they're actually taking. So often they'll give somebody fast instructions and they left key things out. I think those are the people that write instructions for putting things together that you get in the mail, where there's like, it would be nice if this middle step, I see in the diagram, you've put these 2 parts together, but there's like always some disconnect in there that, is there a page missing that I can't see here?
We had that yesterday. My husband, we're renovating our house. We're moving out of our house. We're trying to go through all the things that are in our cabinets. My husband's like, I'm making pumpkin bread with chocolate chips yesterday. And it literally, we had this missing step, and it was like, he's like, it says remove, it says that I need to make this topping, but I don't what's happening in this instruction. I'm like, hear you. It was like,
yeah.
And I do work. Sort of the separate business that I'm working on is helping families navigate special needs services. And so my son is on the autism spectrum, and even just dealing with people with different needs makes me so much more aware of this leadership gap, of this assumption that people get what's in my brain, right? And having to be so clear, when I say, you're 17, you should know that. It's like, oh no, having to be really, really clear when you notice how much unclear language we use, right? Around things like, well, that's appropriate, or, you just act good, or
or even
thing, professional. What do those mean? They mean different things to different people.
And to a young person, they often are just overwhelming and have zero context at all because they don't have the life context that
Right.
goes with it. And so they're like, and a good example is was meeting with a gentleman on the university level, and we were meeting about some expert authority and some of that type of branding. And he was talking about his daughter who is pretty high ranked girl golfer in high school.
Okay.
And of course, right, all the big scholarships, all the big things. And he's like, yeah, but I keep telling her she needs to work on her brand. And I said, "How did that go over? Did you get the whole big glazed look? I mean, she's not even old enough to really drive yet, and you're talking to her about her brand and her, right? They don't, and most people don't have that concept of your internal story and all of those things. But that's such a great example of, for him, I keep telling her she needs to build her brand like all the athletes
Get on it.
because she's 14. I mean, like a girl's brand that she would dream up for herself at
Well, and also
14,
what female golfer brands are there, right? You don't
right?
even, there's no role model. I mean, maybe there is, right? But she doesn't
Not
have
really.
even a path,
Yeah.
even
I
know
mean,
what that looks.
and can she really identify with them?
Yeah.
Because even on that collegiate level, so now you're years away from being there,
Right,
but
right.
you're trying to build it enough because NIL. I mean, there's some of those football players that took pay
Right.
cuts when they went to the NFL because
So
the
weird.
whole level, like the whole change management
I
right
know.
there, right? It's a change in the way the system works.
I know.
And so I understand what her dad's saying. And yes, that's important to get even into your dream school is to have that story there, but talking about terms that they can understand.
Right, right. And she's also a kid who wants to play golf, right? So,
Right.
like, does she want to be a
That's
marketer? Like, that's scary and weird. And
right.
finances at 14. So at this point, like, I mean, I would say, make sure she's talking to a financial advisor, right? And for those of you who
Hmm.
don't know, like, name, image, licensing, right? So when you're
Very
a
important
college
and very,
athlete, you can get money for being a college athlete, but that's another job to do if you're also a student, right? It's another job. Like you're
it is.
apparently
It
a
is.
student, you're also an athlete, you're also running your own marketing,
And
theoretically.
I think they have really good examples of bad branding,
Yeah.
right? For the people that don't have any control and that say things and that have character issues and just even those kinds. But this girl's golden when it comes to those types of
I know.
things.
She's a little
But it's
kid.
just such a great example of a parent or even a boss saying, oh, we need to do this. And it just being, I don't even know where to begin to think about that because I
Yeah.
don't know what that means to them.
Right, right. And what it means to a 50-year-old man and a 20-year-old girl or 14. I mean, it means
Yes,
something very different. It means something very different. And, you know, for all of us, remembering that perspective is so crucial. And we all forget, right? You're sort of, you grow up in your world and you're like, oh, yeah, everyone knows this. And I've managed teams. And as I get older, I realize how diverse all of our experiences are that, anytime you use any language, people are coming at it from a certain angle
they
that,
are. And we all get used to the jargon within our own industries and expect people to understand. And
right.
often they don't.
And they
And
don't
so
ask.
dumbing it down where they really understand is important. And, I think Lauren, you and I are peas in the pod. We could
Yeah.
probably have one of those 3 hour long podcasts talking
Yes.
about growth and humanity and really all the things that make the middle messy. And we're running close on time, of course, because every time it's a good conversation, it just
Yeah.
flies by. But I really want to. I got one last thing I want you to talk about. And for a founder that's listening, that's feeling overwhelmed by the weight of all the constant decisions that they're piling on themselves and the responsibility of them, what's one thing they need to recognize before that pressure starts shaping the business itself?
So I think for me, I'm going to talk about kind of the culture that you're setting up and the examples that you're setting for your team and for even just for yourself. Be careful when you're rushing and you're making, I talked about decisions by default that will create burnout and you'll make mistakes because you're not paying attention. The second one is protection, like you're protecting employees or you're protecting systems for reasons that you might not even know, just like the way things are. Often that protection of an employee or system is damaging the morale of people around you, and you don't realize that. So you might not want to change something or change an employee because you want to protect them, but that does impact the other organization. So stop and kind of look around. And then the last thing that I really want to hammer in is be careful of the burnout by example. So when you're not taking your vacations and you're answering your emails all through the weekend, your entire team is seeing that. You might tell them they have unlimited vacation or PTO, whatever they have, paid time off. But if you're not showing your own life as a priority, your team sees that as a value of your company. And that will cause them to start making mistakes and them to burn out and then leave, and they won't necessarily tell you why. So I think when you
Because it was really implied that no one takes time off because the boss doesn't take time off.
Boston time or the jokes of, oh, half day, you're leaving at 6. So pay attention to how your behavior is being reflected. And if people aren't coming to you with problems or questions, they might be scared to.
Right, because they should be. Because
They
there's
should be.
always questions and problems.
There's always problems, right?
Unless you're like this rare unicorn of a founder who's already delegated everything and someone else is it. We know that's not true.
Let's say you're not. You're not. And that's okay. And that's okay. And I think, knowing that you are human and knowing that you are going to be making mistakes and that's okay. And you can be vulnerable with your staff. But the more you drive yourself to burn out, you are going to have a burned out staff that will not be honest with you. And so I want to stop and think. And if you need help, I'm always available willing to have a conversation with someone to kind of help frame, what's happening when you hit these inflection points to like, where do I need to go next? And sometimes that's as simple as you need a virtual assistant. I know you've had somebody who ran a virtual assistant business recently on your podcast, but other times you need a system. And sometimes it's just a spreadsheet. When I say system, it doesn't need to be fancy. You need to know what's happening and why. And that just really is being intentional about what you're deciding and what you're not deciding.
I think for me, and so probably for a lot of other founders and leaders as well, there's a kind of discernment on vulnerability. We kind of lack that. And you see people either share too much or too little.
Right.
But I think from a founder and a boss standpoint that I don't want to know all of this person's cat sick and this person's right. And so it's also a kind of safety for myself mechanism because I don't want to get involved in everybody's personal stuff. Right. But I think that there's a boundary that you can set there too. Like you want to get to know them, but you also want to not be so personally involved in all of their stuff, if that makes sense.
I think that's, and I want to take that and raise that to a business is not a family. Even a family business is not a family. And when you act like it's a family, people feel that they need to give their heart and soul to it. And that bleeds into that kind of oversharing. And so if you have really clear boundaries of you can be friends, there's certain things that you could do, but the holiday party isn't, again, your family reunion. There is a difference. And that's where that sharing doesn't have to go crazy. If somebody takes off to take their family, you don't need to ask all the, you want to care for them and you want to be there when they need you, but you don't need to know all the specifics and you don't need to share all the specifics either. And I think it's a really good thing to think about because often that burnout starts to happen when I need to give it all because they're like family. Well, they're like family until they lay you off, right? So they're not your family. And if they are your family, you can never, ever let them go and you never can work without them. And we all know that's not how it goes.
No, it's not a healthy way of doing it. And you can connect with people on a deep level and it not cross that boundary of vulnerability. And even with their vacation, what was your favorite part? So now we're talking about something they really loved, and now we're off
Right.
to another topic. Instead of getting in all of the nitty gritty details for every little bitty
Right.
thing, you still were interested in it enough to
Mm.
know and recognize that they
And
were
encourage
gone.
them to go and didn't blame them for it.
Yes,
Told
that's
them
the part
everything
that
will fall apart.
feels like crap. Because
Right.
coming back from vacation sucks anyway, because you do have things pile up that are for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Yep.
aren't just for that position, they're for you. And so you're already feeling stressed coming back and wondering what happened. I came back one time and they gave part of my job that was commission based to somebody else. And then I came back and had to fight for it. I was actually off on maternity leave and came back part of my whole job.
I just
And
want to point out that you equated your vacation to maternity leave, and
yes,
those
I
are
kind
different
of did.
things.
I didn't really think of it in those terms until I remembered exactly why I was off,
No,
right?
that's a much bigger problem.
Right, exactly. Other than just my memory, right? Because it's
No.
been such a long time
Oh,
ago that I was
yeah.
pregnant. Let's face it, my
Oh, yeah.
youngest biological child's 28.
Oh,
So I was off. Oh, yeah. But likely I was working in an industry back in the 90s where, in general, people didn't like you to go off
right.
work. You didn't call in sick. You spread strep throat to everybody, and that's the way they wanted it.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah. And that culture, and I went on maternity leave. When I got back, it was a disaster. I mean, my fill-in, was calling me crying from the stairwell. So I completely understand that coming back, pumping and getting these horrible messages. I mean, and that was,
Yes, I had
10
to
years
fight
later
a fight that I won, but
for you.
right, I'm on maternity leave and you did something that's going to affect my pay.
So common. So common. I hear that
Yes.
story less now, but often that, I mean, all the time.
Oh, yeah. Back
Oh,
then, it was so much worse. But even now, those types of situations exist where, well, you weren't here to do it, so we gave it away.
right, right, right. And the unlimited vacation policies are really, you got to be really careful with those because, I mean, this is sort of a separate note, right? But because they're unlimited, so you don't take them and then you don't get paid off for them. So remember your vacation. This is not for the founders. This is for the people who work with them. Vacation is part of your compensation. You don't give back part of your compensation. You should not give back part of your vacation days.
Right. You shouldn't. And I think that's a great message for the founder as well. It
Yes.
sounds great for unlimited vacation. I have unlimited PTO. If I need off, I can take it. But often
Okay.
people don't take it at all and it's unlimited. But if they have a limited amount, it has more value. And so they're for sure going to take it because they don't want to lose it. And then it becomes that, that desire. You really built demand for it because by making it limited, you limited the supply. So now it's more valuable. And so I often wonder if that unlimited PTO, it sounds like a sales point to work somewhere, but it also, I think, is a strategy point for founders or business owners because they know people
Yep.
aren't going to take
Yeah.
it as much.
And they also don't have to pay it out at the end of the time. So that's a big
Oh, well.
financial, it's an accounting trick, yeah. But also remember vacation actually often means you don't take your phone or you don't check your work email. Yes, somebody
Yeah.
can reach you and find you, but a vacation isn't, doing all your emails from the beach. That's like a different thing.
And it's been a while since I've said this on the show, but I remember in the 90s when I had to get a pager and I felt my life is freaking over because they
Mhm.
can track me down. Because before I could just leave, this is where I'm going, and be gone. And they
Yeah.
couldn't find me unless they called the restaurant or they called, right? So it's such a different era now
So
where that constant contact is there. But yeah, I seriously was like,
how
it's
dare they?
over now. A pager,
I
the
remember,
beeper.
yeah. Yeah,
It
I
was
remember
like my
the
life is
BlackBerry. I don't want it. I don't
I
want it,
don't
right?
want anybody to track me down now. Now you can talk to me whenever you want, or I've got to
Yeah.
stop and get a payphone or borrow a
Oh
phone to
my
call
gosh.
somebody. And wow, I feel old. Back in the
Times
90s, as my
times
kids say,
change.
back in
Times
the 1900s.
Yes, I had my Palm Pilot and my, little flip phone. Yeah,
Or the
it's
BlackBerry was the big
yeah.
thing, right?
Yes.
I kind of miss having buttons. Because I could feel them if I needed, right? I had
Yes.
them all down. Well,
Oh,
it
yeah.
has been such a fantastic conversation, Lauren. I'm
Deborah.
so grateful for you to come on the show. Before we go, please tell the audience how they can find out more, where they can get you, and actually have a conversation with you, all the things.
Yep. So they can find me. My website is Zaz Business Solutions. That's ZAZ, or for your Canadian guests or Canadians or British, it's ZAZ Business Solutions.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn at Lauren Zaslansky Conner, and that's LaurenZaslanskyConner. Every one of those could be spelled wrong, but I'm the only one, so you'll find me there. And just you can always set up a time, and I'm willing to talk to any of your listeners.
Anybody. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Fantastic. And I will link to all of those things in the show notes so you guys will have easy access to them. And if this conversation resonated with you, if it challenged how you think about leadership, decision making, or the pattern shaping how you run and grow your business, then my work lives beyond this podcast in your growth. Thank you. My work focuses on helping leaders and organizations slow down and identify what's actually breaking beneath the surface and build sustainable growth grounded in clarity, trust, and alignment. You can learn more about that work at thegrowthvanguard.com. And if you're interested in going deeper, I have a couple of free resources that I'll also link in the show notes. One is called The Human Sales Playbook. Helps you sell with confidence and clarity without feeling salesy, and 5 signs your growth is breaking. And if you enjoyed today's conversation and got anything out of it at all, please make sure and follow the show Deals with Heels so you don't miss out on what's coming. Like and share. It helps more than you will ever know. And if you're feeling even more generous, then leave us a great review. Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the show. What a great conversation. I know that my listeners got a great deal out of it.
Thank you, Debra. It was such a pleasure, and I really appreciate your time.
Yes, let's definitely stay in touch.
Sounds terrific.
Until next time, everybody, stand strong in your power, especially when it gets uncomfortable. See you next week.